This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Sarah Lancaster, K-State Weed Specialist, kicks off today's show with reminders about why it is important to clean harvest and drilling equipment. She also discusses using cereal rye and wheat. Continuing the show is Dana Woodbury, Executive Director of the Barry Flinchbaugh Center for Ag and Food Policy, as she explains the center and the upcoming 2025 Flinchbaugh Forum. Woody Ornamentals Horticulture Extension Specialist and Director of John C. Pear Horticulture Center, Jason Griffin, ends the show, highlighting some great shrubs to incorporate into the home landscape. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Thursday show discussing cleaning equipment and cereal rye with K-State Weed Specialist Sarah Lancaster. Sarah, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on today, Shelby.
Sarah, as we're first going to talk about the importance of cleaning equipment, what's that first piece of equipment you think about growers really need to make sure they have clean from field to field or from variety to variety?
Yeah, so, it's harvest time, Shelby. So combines are rolling, I think, in the southern part of the state. And one of the things that we know about combines, in addition to being effective at getting crops out of the field, they're also very effective at hiding weed seeds. So there's a few things we need to think about in terms of making sure that, we as the producers aren't kind of inflicting damage to ourselves in terms of spreading weed seeds from field to field. So one thing to think about is harvest order. So making sure that if possible, we're saving weedy fields or at least weedy patches in fields until the end, right? So that we're kind of keeping those weed seeds where they started. So another thing to think about besides harvest order is just cleaning your combine. I understand 100% that when it's harvest time, it's go time, and nobody wants to stop that machine any longer than they absolutely have to. But if you've harvested a particularly weedy field, right? Maybe you thought this field was clean, but once you got in there, you recognize that maybe there's a bigger weed problem than you expected. Okay, so now you've got a combine that's full of, let's say, pigweed seeds, right? So there are a few things we can do to think about, cleaning out that combine. So there's kind of a fast way and a more thorough way, right? So if folks would at least do the thorough way, if they buy a new to them machine, right? We don't want to import weed seeds from other places. So we'll kind of save that kind of thorough situation for another day. Let's talk today about just kind of doing some quicker things during harvest. Just thinking about letting that combine sort of self-clean a little bit. So running the unloading auger, even though you've got the grain out, and just letting some of those weed seeds kind of go ahead and work their way out that way. Maybe opening up grain elevator doors or rock traps, the base of that unloading auger where things collect. So opening all those areas and then just running that separator in the back and just kind of moving the air through that machine to dislodge any of those weed seeds that might be stuck. And then I know folks who keep a leaf blower or some other air compressor sort of tool with them in the combine. Sometimes we use it to keep chaff off of places that are likely to be fire hazards, but tools like that can also be important for dislodging weed seeds that might be stuck on the exterior of the combine, or even once you've opened up those elevator doors, rock traps, things like that, you can use that air to kind of dislodge more of those weed seeds. So just trying to leave them where you found them is the principle here in terms of managing those weed seeds at harvest.
So important to clean that combine before you leave the field you just cut?
Yes, we want to leave them where they're at, if at all possible.
What's something else that you might want to make sure producers are cleaning before they go from field to field?
Yeah, so corn harvest in a lot of the state also comes with cover crop seeding. And one of our very successful cover crops is cereal rye. As a weed scientist, if I could pick my favorite cover crop, it's probably cereal rye because it produces lots of biomass for weed seed suppression the next spring. However, if you ask me as a weed scientist, what's one of my least favorite cover crops here in the wheat state, I would have to say cereal rye, right? It's definitely kind of a double-edged sword here in terms of being very good at doing cover crop things, but also very good at being a contaminant in our wheat production systems. So, one of the best ways to keep cereal rye from being a problem in our wheat production systems is to make sure that we're not spreading seed here during planting time. So, things we think about in terms of spreading seed would obviously be, drills or seeding equipment, but also, fertilizer spreaders. If you're fall applying dry fertilizer and maybe you're using that same spreader to just broadcast seed some cereal rye, right? You could have rye contaminant there. So cereal rye can sneak in lots of places. Our folks that do clean wheat seed for planting later, if they also clean cover crop seed, they have an extra special situation there of making sure that they've got their cleaning and conditioning equipment free of that cereal rye seed before they switch back to wheat. Ideally, we're going to get all the wheat done before we put the cereal rye through the machine, but I think there's just a lot of things to think about here this time of year in terms of not inflicting injury to ourselves, and trying not to have more cereal rye in our wheat than we have had historically.
What are some major differences of how people can tell cereal rye and wheat apart?
So once it's heading in the spring, it's pretty easy to tell apart. Cereal rye tends to be taller. Cereal rye will have a thinner and longer seed head compared to wheat. But this time of year when we're planting, we got to look at the seed. And if you look at them separately, quickly, they can look pretty similar. But if you're looking at cereal rye in amongst a bunch of wheat seed, it does stand out because it tends to be more of a gray-green color rather than that nice kind of amber color or golden color of wheat seeds. And also, rye seeds tend to be longer and thinner than wheat seeds. Most of our wheat seeds are going to be kind of, round and plump. Cereal rye seeds are going to just be a little longer, thinner, and then, yeah, that kind of gray-green or yellowish kind of color rather than the more browns that we see in our wheat seeds.
Is there anything producers should do to keep in mind if they accidentally do end up with rye in their wheat, or what's that possibility of that happening and what can they do?
Yeah, so one of the better ways to try to manage a cereal rye or feral rye infestation in a wheat field is to consider herbicide tolerant wheat varieties. So either the Clearfield system or the coaxium system will allow for post-emergence control of those cereal rye weeds as well as other grassy weeds. Other things to think about, crop rotation, honestly, Shelby, is the best way to handle a cereal rye infested field, or a wheat field that's infested with any other winter annual grasses. So just rotating away into a broadleaf crop where those grassy weeds tend to be easier to control.
What makes a field an infested field?
What is an infested field? So, as with anything, Shelby, cereal rye can build up a weed seed bank, right? So especially if, those seeds shatter or what have you. And so if we think about just the relative abundance of cereal rye in that field, and I think maybe the question to ask yourself is, would I want to walk that field in hand rogue to remove the rye, right? Or am I looking for some other more efficient alternative? I know some of our listeners, Shelby, are going to be very familiar with the concept of walking wheat fields to remove that cereal rye or that feral rye. But there comes a point where either we need to look at some sort of chemical control or maybe just rotating away from wheat for a season or two.
Do we need to worry about anything with temperature or moisture when we're looking at potentially chemical control?
Oh, that's a great question, Shelby. We get this question pretty regularly in the wintertime when we think about applications to wheat. One of the things about controlling weeds is that the weeds have to be actively growing for the herbicides to work. So for winter annual weeds, we tend to think of that threshold as being about 40 degrees. And we want to make sure that we've got like a week or so around that application in order to make sure that those weeds are actively growing at the time of the application and then actively growing for a few days after the application so they can get the herbicide moved through the plant to actually kill the weed. So, yeah, that's a great question.
If people have any questions on cleaning their machinery, cereal, rye, or wheat, what's your recommendation?
So a couple of things, Shelby. As always, you can link to some e-update articles on the subject. Herbicide control, we always talk about the chemical weed control guide, so you can provide the link to that one, or folks can pick up a hard copy at their local extension office. And then for this week, I've got kind of a different suggestion for you. We recently recorded an episode of the War Against Weeds podcast, and we were talking not so much about combine cleaning, but combine setup to avoid volunteers in your subsequent crops. So if folks are interested in another resource on just kind of weed management concerns at harvest, we can give you the link for that one as well.
Sarah, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Always a pleasure to chat with you, Shelby.
That was K-State weed specialist Sarah Lancaster. I will link the resources that she mentioned, which included e-update articles and her War Against Weeds podcast in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because we have more for you up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show discussing the Barry Flinchbaugh Center for Ag and Food Policy and the upcoming 2025 Flinchbaugh Forum with Executive Director of the Barry Flinchbaugh Center for Ag and Food Policy, Dana Woodbury. Dana, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Dana, before we talk about this Flinchbaugh Forum, can you remind us what is the Barry Flinchbaugh Center for Ag and Food Policy?
We're fairly new over the past couple of years, but our primary goal is to carry on the work and the legacy of Dr. Flinchbaugh. And many of you will know that he was very well known for his student engagement and encouraging students to work in the ag policy arena and stayed in touch with them and helped connect them with the younger students. And so our aim there is to help continue the student piece of this. In addition, he was also very well known for his work that he did in the ag policy world, not only here at home locally through his extension efforts and really educating producers and others about what the policies look like, what are the truths. And so that's the legacy that we're trying to carry forward.
And while most people probably know who Barry Flinchbaugh is, for those who maybe don't, what are a few key adjectives you'd use to describe him?
Honest, funny, engaging. And funny you asked that. We have been asking our registrants for the upcoming Flinchbaugh Forum, what's one word that they can describe? And we'll be sharing all the different words that we heard from the registrants during the forum.
And so while we're thinking about this Flinchbaugh Center, what do you really see as its purpose and its driving force?
We are focused on ag policy education, and with the framework that Dr. Flinchbaugh used of policy alternatives and consequences.
What does that mean?
Really, the way he approached things was very much transparent, focused on being nonpartisan, and he would really focus first to identify and clarify what is the issue that we're trying to define. And once he would work to define that, then he would explore and propose solutions, alternatives, and then further look into what are the consequences if we were to pursue one or the other of these solutions that have been proposed. And then once that information all came together, then he had a document to share with the people that were going to be making the policy so they could look through what are some options to move forward and then what do the consequences look like. It was very much focused on the education perspective. We are not an advocacy organization, but very much focused on getting the truth in front of the decision makers and the people that are going to impact the producers and ranchers across the United States.
How does an upcoming event support this purpose and help encourage people learning more about ag policy and food policy?
We're really excited about our inaugural event with the Flinchbaugh Forum. And what we're really wanting people to do is feel like they're stepping back into Dr. Flinchbaugh's classroom. And we really want it to be a bold experience, a very honest, transparent opportunity for people to talk about ag policy and to have an environment where we can exchange ideas, just as we would have if Dr. Flinchbaugh were sitting at the table with us.
And wanting to talk through that agenda and highlighting what's making that feel like you're stepping back into the classroom with Flinchbaugh. Starting off at 8:30, what are you doing?
Our opening, where we're going to have a chance to hear from a couple of his previous students who continue to work in the ag policy arena today. And we're going to outline also kind of how we're going to approach the day and what people can expect as we go through the different discussions.
And who will be those speakers that we'll be hearing from who are former students and colleagues of Flinchbaugh?
Yes, so we will have Brad Lubin, who is an ag economist that worked with Dr. Flinchbaugh for several years at K-State. He's now at the University of Nebraska. And we'll have Greg Dowd, and he is with the National Milk Producers Federation. And then we'll also be hearing from Mike Torrey, who works with Torrey and Associates in ag policy.
What will be following that welcome to class?
That's when we're going to get down to business. Our board a couple of years ago, or about a year ago, identified 3 key policy issues that we wanted to advance forward. And we did that by talking to producers and policymakers across the country. We did a survey to find out what are the pressing issues coming down the pipeline. And so we're going to be digging into those 3 issues. And one that is near and dear to people in Kansas, of course, is looking at the longevity of the Ogallala Aquifer. The second is also an issue that is top of mind for everybody and is in the current news, but that is ag labor issues. What does that look like moving forward? What do we do in the short term? And what does that look like in the long term? And then the third issue that we're going to dig into is also near and dear to Kansans, but that is looking at biosecurity issues in the livestock industry. And are there gaps there from a policy perspective as we move forward? And so we'll be digging into those 3 issues, really walking through it from the perspective that Dr. Flinchbaugh would, defining this is the issue we're going to talk about today. And here's the work that's been done. Here's some solutions, but here's also some potential consequences for those solutions. And so our moderator will guide us through that and then give the audience a chance to interact and talk about those issues and how they're impacting their lives. And we'll also ask to engage the participants by also providing some written comments at the end of the day. They don't have a chance to engage during the question and answer section.
And another informational piece then taking place after that topic presentation titled 3 Tough Topics, What Keeps Ag Leaders Up at Night. We then have Policy That Feeds the Nation, a legacy of leadership in U.S. agriculture, and who will attendees get to hear from there?
Well, this one will be a lot of fun and bring a lot of depth and knowledge from the ag policy arena here in the U.S. But those are 2 former Secretaries of Ag for the United States, Dan Glickman and Mike Johans. And I will mention that both of these gentlemen serve on the Flinchbaugh Center board and have helped get us off the ground the past couple of years and been an integral part of how we approach ag policy education as we move forward.
What will lunch involve?
We are going to make the lunch session lighthearted, fun, give us a chance to really honor the legacy of Dr. Flinchbaugh, share some memories and fun times. And we're going to do that through the lens of ag broadcasters. A couple of people that have interviewed Dr. Flinchbaugh in several different parts of his career in the past. They're going to share stories and engage the audience during lunch. So it'll be a light, fun time. with the opportunity to really enjoy some of the stories that we all have about Dr. Flinchbaugh.
Who was the keynote speaker after lunch?
Yes, so we're really excited about our keynote speaker. We have invited or confirmed that Vance Crowe will be joining us. And he is very well known by giving keynotes that provide the audience with actionable tools on what they can do after that. And his talk is going to be titled Worthy Adversaries: How to Cultivate Productive Disagreements so that you can arrive at better ag policy. And so that's really helping us think about how can we come together and have productive conversations about ag policy, knowing that there's a divide. What does that look like moving forward? How can we work together? What can we do for the good of the nation's producers and ranchers?
And how does the educational programming wrap up?
Yes, so we're going to wrap up the day focused on how U.S. producers and the industry can remain competitive, given not only what's happening currently in the environment, but also what's coming down the pipeline. And so it'll be an engaging conversation. Again, the opportunity for the audience to interact with our speakers.
And Dana, how does the day wrap up completely?
As we were thinking about how to bring this day to a close, many of us thought about what would happen after Dr. Flinchbaugh's class on a Friday afternoon. And we're going to raise a toast in a little bit of a different environment, an opportunity for people to network and exchange ideas after. But we are going to toast Dr. Barry Flinchbaugh. And some of us may know it as he used to say church. But in this case, we're going to call it a toast to Dr. Flinchbaugh.
And when and where is this taking place?
Yes, so this is coming up on Friday, September 26th. It's going to be in Manhattan, Kansas at the Bluemont Hotel.
If people are interested, how can they get registered?
Right. If anybody is looking for the registration link, you can find it on our website at www.flinchbaughcenter.com. And there will be a pop-up box that comes up on the website. If you happen to miss that, you can go to the events section on the website, and that will lead you to the registration link.
What is cost of registration?
Yeah, so we have a couple of different options. If you want to engage for the full day, including the toast to Flinchbaugh, that is $100. That includes a light breakfast as well as a lunch. And then you'll receive drink tickets for the reception. If you're not able to attend the event during the day and you just want to come to the reception, that's $25. And again, that will include the opportunity to engage with participants from the day as well as a couple of drink tickets. And if you just want to attend the actual events during the day, that's an option as well, and that's $75.
Dana, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Shelby.
That was Executive Director of the Barry Flinchbaugh Center for Ag and Food Policy, Dana Woodbury, as she was discussing the 2025 Flinchbaugh Forum, which is taking place Friday, September 26th. In today's show notes on agtoday.net, I will put the link if you'd like to find out more information or get registered. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Agriculture Today. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. The September K-State Garden Hour covered shrubs that thrive in Kansas. Jason Griffin, Woody Ornamentals Horticulture Extension Specialist and Director of the John C. Pear Horticulture Center, highlighted some great shrubs to incorporate into the home landscape.
Why do we like shrubs? Why don't we like shrubs? Right? There's lots of reasons to like shrubs. They take up less space in the landscape than your average tree. New homeowners with smaller lots and smaller planting areas, shrubs can give you a lot of diversity. They can lead your eye to the right place, provide wildlife habitat, all the things that we want from our landscape plants. But it's not just about flowers. We got fruit, we got bark color, we got foliage, lots of reasons to expand our palette here and look for some shrubs. 20 years ago, green giant arborvitae was a brand new plant. These days, you can't walk out your front door without tripping over one hardly. They're everywhere. It is a robust, fast-growing, evergreen shrub. It is easy to propagate, easy to grow, transplant, doesn't have a whole lot of pest problems or issues. So it has become a favorite of lots of landscapers and designers recently. Cautions, I would say, are you will see bagworms on it, but bagworms get on everything. They're easy to control. The only issues we've had with it is in record-setting heat and drought years, but it does need a little extra irrigation to get it through that. A little bit tougher is Arizona cypress. It is incredibly heat and drought tolerant, as the name would suggest. There's a couple varieties on the market. There's a weeping form, there's a columnar form, but it's a really nice behaved plant. If I were to say anything negative about this, it requires full sun. If it is shaded, it's going to be thin. And the trees, when they get large enough, will even shade themselves, and some of the bottom branches get thinned out. So it might be a tree that you want to replace after 10 or 15 years if it starts shading itself out and is not giving you the density that you want. Venturing into some broadleaf evergreens, boxwoods are always a popular choice for landscapes, particularly in a protected environment. Green velvet has been our go-to standard for years, but there's a lot of new ones on the market. Sprinter is one. We planted a row of them. So far, they have all held in there really, really well. Moist, well-drained soil, little protection from the western sun and those cold winter winds. Your boxwoods will be a lot happier. So we talked about getting year-round interest in your landscape, and dogwoods are a great way to do it. Arctic fire, midwinter fire, yellow twig dogwood. There's a whole selection of cultivars out there of these dogwoods, which can give you really nice winter interest. They really bring a landscape to life on a gray, dark winter day. Let's chat about viburnums for a little bit. Love viburnums. Some are really tough. Some need a little more TLC. Double file viburnum, I would say, needs just a little more TLC. It's a beautiful plant, but it would like a well-drained soil. It would like a little protection from the western wind. You will see this in every landscape or in every nursery yard in the spring. But if you put it out in the middle of nowhere, it's not going to be very happy. So it does want a little bit of protection. It's got this nice foliage texture. Got these nice flowers that just line up on the stem in late spring. It's a beautiful plant. Can't mention shrubs without talking about spirea. There are a ton of spirea on the market. They all fall into some basic categories. There's your spring blooming spireas, and there's your summer blooming spireas. Fujino pink, nice little Thunberg spirea. Several years ago, we grew a bunch of seedlings off of Fujino pink, looking for a better pink. We didn't find a better pink, but we found a really nice white. It is beautiful. It is hardy. It is cold tolerant, heat tolerant. It's an outstanding plant, even though it's an old school spirea that most people have forgotten about. We're trying hard to get that one out into the industry. We didn't even get to lilac or barberry or roses. The world of shrubs is huge, with a ton of varieties and a ton of cultivars within those species. Way too much to talk about in an hour. We do have a few resources that are available for you from the K-State Research Extension bookstore. Deciduous Shrubs for Kansas, Evergreen Shrubs, my colleague Dr. Boyer put together years ago. They are available at the bookstore, and they are free. You can download those for nothing. There's a bunch of other resources up there as well.
That's Jason Griffin, Ordy Ornamentals Horticulture Extension Specialist and Director of the John C. Pear Horticulture Center, with information on shrubs that thrive in Kansas. To listen to the full webinar, search for K-State Garden Hour and click on Most Recent Webinars. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.